Welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping straight into an exploration of what is arguably the most resilient, but also the most heavily burdened, unsung hero of your biology, the liver.
Yeah, it really is an unsung hero.
It is. And more importantly, today we're going to expose a silent epidemic that is likely affecting you or people you know. People who think they are doing, everything perfectly right when it comes to their metabolic health.
Right, because the standard advice just isn't cutting it anymore.
Exactly. Our grounding source material today is this really fascinating presentation by Dr. Alex titled, 5 Things Destroying Your Liver That Aren't Alcohol. And it fundamentally challenges the conventional wisdom we all hear about metabolic disease.
It does. It completely flips the script on modern dietary guidelines.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when we talk about liver damage, the ingrained cultural narrative we all share just immediately defaults to alcohol.
Right. You hear liver damage, you think heavy drinking.
Right. But the medical reality has shifted entirely away from that paradigm, hasn't it?
It has. Completely. The fastest growing cause of chronic liver disease worldwide has absolutely nothing to do with drinking. It's a condition known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, or MAFLD.
NAFLD.
Yeah, and it's currently driving rates of cirrhosis and liver failure to just terrifying, unprecedented highs across the globe. What's fascinating here is how the very terminology we use has accidentally created this massive, widespread false sense of security.
Oh, you mean the non-alcoholic label?
Exactly.
Because that label was originally intended just as a clinical differentiator, right? Just to separate these patients from those with alcoholic cirrhosis.
Yes, clinically speaking. But for the general public, it inadvertently downgraded the perceived threat. People subconsciously assume that if alcohol isn't the primary culprit, the resulting liver damage is, somehow a secondary or less dangerous form of the disease.
Like a mild metabolic warning light rather than a critical failure in progress.
Precisely, and that false sense of security is incredibly dangerous. The clinical consequences are identical. The progression to absolute liver failure is just as real.
And modern life 2026 is completely saturated with dietary and lifestyle factors that subject your liver tissues to the exact same, if not greater, biochemical stress as chronic heavy drinking.
It's everywhere. We are swimming in it.
Which brings us directly to you, the listener, and our core mission for this deep dive. Today is about uncovering 5 everyday, completely normal factors that are secretly destroying your liver health behind the scenes.
And giving you the tools to stop it.
Yes. More importantly, we are going to break down the actionable protocols you can use to take back control of your biology before irreversible tissue scarring occurs. So let's look at the single biggest biological driver of this condition, fructose overload.
This is a huge one. Dr. Alex heavily references a pivotal 2009 study published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation here.
Right, which really put a spotlight on the mechanics of something called de novo lipogenesis.
Yeah, de novo lipogenesis. It's the aggressive biological pathway where your liver synthesizes new fat directly from circulating sugars.
Making fat from scratch.
Basically, yeah. And the 2009 research demonstrated definitively that fructose drives this fat creation process far more aggressively than other sugars.
Okay, so clarify this for me. Why is fructose so much worse than normal glucose?
To understand the sheer scale of this issue, we have to look at the unique metabolic routing of different carbohydrates. Glucose is the primary energy substrate for the body, right?
Right.
So it can be utilized by virtually every single cell you have. When you consume glucose, the metabolic burden is distributed. Your skeletal muscles take a large portion, your brain utilizes it, your adipose tissue takes some.
So the whole body chips in to process it.
Exactly. But fructose is isolated entirely to the liver.
Wow.
Yeah, it lacks that systemic distribution network that glucose has. When a massive influx of fructose hits your system, it bypasses the normal regulatory cellular checkpoints.
Like the enzymes that usually act as traffic cops.
Right, like the phosphofructokinase enzyme. That usually controls the rate at which sugar enters the metabolic assembly line. But fructose essentially hops on a biological fast track, forcing the liver to process the entire load simultaneously.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The processing of fructose isn't just a simple conversion issue. It triggers a chaotic downstream chain reaction inside the liver cells.
It's complete chaos. When the liver rapidly metabolizes this incoming fructose, it requires massive amounts of ATP.
which is your cellular energy currency.
Right. The sheer velocity of this fructose metabolism actively drains the liver's ATP reserves. And as a direct biochemical byproduct of this rapid energy depletion, the cells release an absolute flood of uric acid.
And the liver doesn't just passively observe this drop in ATP and spike in uric acid, right?
No, not at all. It interprets this specific biochemical signature as a massive physiological emergency signal.
Like alarms going off.
Exactly. The organ essentially enters a state of crisis management. It operates under the assumption that the body is facing an immediate starvation threat. So to survive this perceived crisis, it forcefully upregulates fat production to store as much energy as possible right then and there.
Just packing it away for the famine it thinks is coming.
Yep. And the collateral damage of that uric acid flood is severe. Uric acid is highly inflammatory. It directly provokes intense oxidative stress within the cells, which structurally damages the mitochondria.
So the powerhouses of the cells are getting wrecked.
Completely. Those mitochondrial networks become completely dysfunctional under the overwhelming metabolic burden. So what begins as simple de novo lipogenesis, just fat accumulation, rapidly progresses into a state called NASH.
Raw alcoholic steatohepatitis.
Right. The tissue becomes inflamed, it begins to scar, and the pathway to full-blown cirrhosis is officially paved.
And the truly concerning part for anyone listening is the sheer ubiquity of this compound. Fructose is hiding in plain sight.
It's in everything.
It makes up 50% of standard table sugar. It's the foundational ingredient in high fructose corn syrup, and it's engineered into almost all heavily processed foods.
Even ones that aren't sweet.
Yeah, often serving as a hidden preservative or a browning agent in products that you wouldn't even guess had sugar. But it's crucial to clarify here, consuming whole fruit is perfectly fine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The fructose in a whole apple or a handful of berries is bound within a dense matrix of fiber. And that heavy fiber content significantly moderates gastric emptying. It slows the rate of intestinal absorption, giving the liver ample time to process the sugar without triggering that ATP-draining emergency cascade.
The structural breaks provided by that fiber matrix make all the difference. The crisis we are facing is driven by pure, unadulterated, added fructose that hits the liver unbuffered.
Which brings us to the ultimate, most devastatingly efficient delivery system for unbuffered fructose ever invented. Sugary drinks.
The worst offender.
This represents the second major destroyer of liver health.
And the data on this is unequivocal. A landmark 2010 study from the Journal of Hepatology established a direct, irrefutable link between the consumption of sugary beverages and a drastically increased risk of NAFLD.
And the core mechanism at play here is not merely the biochemical composition of the sugar itself.
Right. It's about the specific kinetic variables, dose and speed.
The speed of delivery changes the entire metabolic equation. Drinking a typical soda or a commercial fruit juice hits the digestive tract with a massive, highly concentrated payload of fructose that transits directly to the portal vein in a matter of minutes.
Minutes. It's unbelievable. The liver's processing capacity is fundamentally overwhelmed by the sheer velocity of the substrate arrival.
It's a biological tsunami.
That is the perfect way to describe it. Because liquids bypass the mechanical digestion and breakdown phases required for solid foods, that fructose payload hits the hepatic tissues instantly. The liver cannot utilize or export the energy fast enough, forcing an immediate, massive conversion into stored liver fat.
Furthermore, these liquid calories exploit a critical flaw in our neurobiology.
The satiety issue.
Yeah. Sugary beverages do not trigger the release of incretin hormones or adequately stimulate the brain's satiety centers.
They're essentially ghost calories to your brain.
It's the ultimate liquid calorie trap. Your brain simply doesn't register that you've just ingested several hundred calories of pure energy.
So you're still hungry.
Right. Because that satiety signal is never sent, you don't naturally downregulate your appetite for the rest of the day. You end up stacking these massive liquid sugar payloads directly on top of your normal daily food intake, ensuring a persistent caloric surplus.
And that surplus is accompanied by chronic, repeated insulin spikes. Every time you consume one of these beverages, you force the liver back into a state of severe metabolic stress. And we aren't just talking about conventional soda here.
No, this pathogenic mechanism applies to anything delivering a significant sugar payload in liquid form.
Exactly. That includes the commercial fruit juices that strip away all the protective fiber we just discussed, sweetened coffees, modern energy drinks, popular sports drinks, and heavily sweetened teas.
They all weaponize that exact same dose and speed dynamic against your liver. It forces the organ into a perpetual state of triage.
Constant triage.
Let's move to the third factor, which challenges a significant amount of deeply ingrained mid-century dietary advice. We are talking about the consumption of industrial seed oils.
This is a controversial one for some, but the science is catching up. We are specifically looking at heavily industrialized, polyunsaturated vegetable oils, soybean oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, and canola oil.
And the source material references a 2018 study published in Hepatology that investigated the hepatic impact of these specific fats.
Right. The researchers found that diets high in these seed oils promoted significant liver fat accumulation and hepatic steatosis in animal models.
And while the translation of animal models to long-term human clinical outcomes in evolving science, the researchers noted there is absolutely enough compelling biochemical evidence to warrant serious caution.
Definite caution.
So to understand why these oils, which were marketed for decades as the heart-healthy alternative to saturated fats, are now under such intense scrutiny, we have to look at their chemical structure and our evolutionary baseline.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the core issue centers on a specific omega-6 fatty acid called linoleic acid. Omega-6 fats are essential. Human biology requires them for specific immune and inflammatory responses.
So they aren't inherently evil.
No, not at all. The danger lies in the dose and the historical dietary ratio. If you examine ancestral human diets, the ratio of omega-6 fatty acids to omega-3 fatty acids was typically around 1:1, maybe drifting to 4:1 depending on geography.
And that 1-to-1 ratio kept systemic inflammatory responses perfectly balanced.
Perfectly in check.
But over the last 100 years, driven almost entirely by the mass industrialization and cheap extraction of these seed oils, the modern Western diet has undergone a radical, unprecedented shift. Today, the average person is consuming an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 20:1, or in some demographics, 30:1.
It's staggering, and human biology just does not have the evolutionary mechanisms to safely handle that skewed ratio. Omega-6 fats are the direct biological precursors to pro-inflammatory eicosanoids and signaling molecules.
Meaning they tell the body to inflame.
Right. When your intake of omega-6 is that astronomically high relative to omega-3, it shifts your entire systemic baseline into a highly prone inflammatory state. And the liver, being the central hub of lipid metabolism, absorbs a massive amount of that inflammatory burden.
And beyond the systemic inflammation, there's a fundamental structural problem with these oils.
The instability.
Yeah. Polyunsaturated fats contain multiple double bonds in their chemical structure, which makes them highly unstable. During the intense industrial processing required to extract them, which often involves high heat, bleaching, and chemical solvents, and especially when you expose them to heat, light, and oxygen while cooking in your own kitchen.
They oxidize readily.
Right.
That lipid peroxidation process creates harmful, highly reactive compounds, including toxic aldehydes.
Which are basically cellular wrecking balls.
Exactly. When ingested, these oxidized compounds physically damage cellular structures. They drive severe oxidative stress and inflammation deep within the liver tissues, further accelerating the progression toward NASH.
So the practical, actionable takeaway for you listening is to step back from the highly processed seed oils and prioritize chemically stable fats.
Things your great-grandmother would recognize as food.
Exactly. We are talking about cooking with extra virgin olive oil, using avocado oil, or returning to high-quality butter or ghee. These are fats with stable molecular structures that can actually withstand heat without breaking down into inflammatory, cellular damaging compounds.
It is a vital intervention for lowering the baseline oxidative stress on the liver.
Which brings us to the fourth destroyer.
Yeah.
And this is a fascinating pivot because it is completely disconnected from the composition of your diet.
Yeah, this one surprises people.
This is a purely behavioral factor. Late-night eating.
This concept completely reframes our understanding of digestion and metabolic timing. A landmark 2014 study published in the journal Cell Metabolism proved that the liver does not operate as a static, passive filter that's just always turned on.
Right.
It actively operates on a strict 24-hour circadian rhythm governed by its own internal autonomous biological clock.
So think of your liver as having two entirely distinct shifts. During the day, when the sun is up and you are active, your liver is biologically awake. Its nutrient-sensing pathways are upregulated. It is biochemically primed with the necessary enzymes to process incoming nutrients, sort metabolic substrates, and efficiently store glucose as glycogen.
That's the day shift.
Right. But at night, the liver's primary function completely inverts. The night shift is fundamentally different.
It clocks out of processing mode.
Yes. At night, it redirects its resources away from incoming digestion to focus on producing baseline glucose to keep your brain functioning while you sleep, burning stored lipids, and performing vital cellular repair and autophagy.
The metabolic mismatch occurs when you violate that circadian boundary. When you consume a heavy meal or a sugary snack late at night, you are forcefully demanding that your liver process a massive influx of external nutrients at a time when its primary processing enzymes are literally suppressed.
You are forcing the day shift's heavy lifting onto a night shift that is chemically unequipped to handle it.
Exactly. The biochemical pathways optimized for burning fat and storing glycogen are simply not active at that hour. As a result, the calories you consume late at night are overwhelmingly, almost by default, shunted into ectopic fat storage inside the liver itself.
Ectopic meaning fat stored where it shouldn't be.
Right. And the downstream consequences extend far beyond simple lipid storage. This late-night nutrient influx actually disrupts the expression of the liver's internal clock genes like BAML1 and clock,
Which manage the schedule.
Right. These transcription factors manage thousands of secondary biological processes, including systemic inflammation control and peripheral insulin sensitivity. When you desynchronize these clock genes by feeding during the biological night, you create lingering systemic metabolic dysfunction that carries over and continues to damage your metabolic flexibility even during the following day.
So the actionable fix here is incredibly straightforward. It's not just about tracking macronutrients, but fiercely protecting the temporal window of when you eat.
Timing is everything.
Keep all your caloric intake within a 10 to 12-hour eating window during the daylight hours. As a hard biological rule, stop eating completely at least 2 to 3 hours before you go to sleep.
Give your liver the uninterrupted fasting time it desperately needs to run its nightly repair and regeneration protocols.
It's arguably one of the most powerful, entirely free interventions you can leverage for profound metabolic health.
Absolutely free and wildly effective.
Which brings us to our fifth and final factor, the sneakiest, most insidious destroyer of them all: chronic overeating.
The mechanism here is foundational to human thermodynamics. We look at a 2008 study in the New England Journal of Medicine, which demonstrated that simply achieving weight loss by eating fewer calories, even without making wild restrictive changes to dietary composition, can successfully reverse non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
So what does this all mean for our daily routines? It highlights that liver damage from a caloric surplus isn't necessarily driven by massive, noticeable binge eating.
No, it's much quieter than that.
It's driven by a slight, unnoticeable daily surplus. We're talking about one extra latte, a handful of chips, or a harmless-looking bakery muffin every single day over the course of years.
Because energy cannot be destroyed, it must be stored. When you consistently ingest slightly more energy than your basal metabolic rate and daily activity require, your primary adipose tissue, the fat under your skin, expands first.
That's the normal storage site.
Right. But once those primary subcutaneous storage sites reach their expansion limit, the body is forced to find secondary storage locations. Your liver gets drafted into becoming an ectopic fat reservoir for all those excess calories that simply cannot fit anywhere else.
It becomes packed with intracellular fat droplets.
And a hepatocyte, a liver cell packed to the brim with lipid droplets, simply cannot perform its essential filtering and metabolic functions. The tissue becomes highly inflamed, cellular distress signals are triggered, and it begins to lay down rigid scar tissue to protect itself.
The clinical data from the New England Journal of Medicine study, however, is incredibly encouraging.
Very encouraging.
Reversing this specific mechanism doesn't require achieving single-digit body fat or reaching some mathematically perfect ideal weight.
Not at all. The data clearly shows that losing just 5 to 10% of your starting body weight is enough to dramatically drop the volume of ectopic fat stored inside the liver.
That relatively modest reduction is enough to alleviate the cellular lipotoxicity, clear up systemic inflammation, and actually begin healing the early stages of fibrosis. The threshold for profound biological relief is entirely achievable for the average person.
This raises an important question about how we define our baseline reality today. When we look at all 5 of these factors, fructose overload, liquid sugary drinks, highly unstable seed oils, late-night circadian disruption, and a chronic caloric surplus, The unifying thread is that all of them are completely normal behaviors in the year 2026.
Right. Because the majority of the population engages in these behaviors constantly, we inherently assume they are biologically safe.
But normal and healthy are not the same thing anymore. Normal and healthy have become wildly divergent concepts.
And we have to remember that fatty liver disease is entirely silent. It possesses no pain receptors.
None. You don't feel it happening.
You don't get a warning ache in your right side when de novo lipogenesis kicks into overdrive. By the time you actually start feeling the clinical symptoms, the profound, unexplainable physiological fatigue, the strange stomach discomfort, or by the time your doctor flags elevated ALT or AST liver enzymes on a routine blood test severe, dangerous scarring has already begun.
You cannot feel the ectopic fat accumulating, but if you are living a perfectly normal modern lifestyle, the statistical probability is that it is happening right now.
The silver lining within Dr. Alex's breakdown is the extraordinary resilience of the human body. Your liver is practically a biological superpower.
It really is. It is one of the only major organs in the entire human anatomy that possesses the astonishing capacity to completely regenerate itself from significant tissue-level damage.
If you simply remove the destructive inputs, if you aggressively eliminate the liquid fructose, if you align your eating window with your circadian biology, if you swap out the highly oxidized inflammatory oils and pull your daily calories out of a surplus, your liver will do the rest.
It knows exactly what to do.
Patients with substantial NFLD who commit to these foundational changes can watch their livers remodel and return to a near-normal, highly functional state within months to a couple of years. The power to reverse the clock is entirely in your hands.
It is entirely about getting out of your body's way, removing the evolutionary mismatches, and letting the organ execute the healing protocols it was designed for.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought today, building on the concept of that internal biological clock. We just discussed how eating a simple snack at midnight is enough to completely derail the ancient 24-hour circadian rhythm of your liver and trigger systemic inflammation.
Just a simple snack.
It makes you wonder, if a single minor behavioral shift like late-night eating can cause that much biological confusion, what other perfectly normal modern conveniences in our 2026 world are secretly confusing the ancient evolutionary programming of your body right now? Something to mull over the next time you reach for the fridge after dark. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay healthy, and we will see you next time.